Okay, so just a little bit about Healthy Aging Alberta. So if you're not already familiar, Healthy Aging Alberta is a network of community-based seniors serving, or CBSS, organizations and allies across our province, united by a shared vision, which is to make Alberta one of the best places in the world to grow older. We exist to build connections to capacity within CBSS or within the CBSS sector, and also work to link the sector with other systems such as health and housing. Because organizations serving older adults with non-medical community supports play a really critical role in Albertans aging in their own homes or aging in community, the belief is that by coordinating and integrating efforts and by having a united voice and linking with other systems such as health and housing, it's critical to meeting the needs of this growing demographic. Healthy Aging Alberta emerged in 2019. It's based on the Healthy Aging model out of BC, British Columbia. It is backboned by the United Way of Calgary and area. And the United Way and the government of Alberta have worked really closely together in its development. And one of the ways that we build connections and capacity is through CORE Alberta. So CORE stands for Collaborative Online Resources and Education. It's a free member-based digital knowledge and learning platform, functions as a communications tool, content sharing tool, capacity building tool, collaboration tool as well, allowing users to access resources and collaborate with others who have aligned mandates. And it's really contributing to the network and sector building goals of Healthy Aging Alberta. So if you're not already a member, it's a little pitch. You're welcome to head over to CORE Alberta and register, and you can post events yourself, news, funding opportunities, other resources that you would like to share with the sector. And the platform also hosts a variety of core groups. And so a group is essentially a dedicated area on the site for either an existing collaborative to share their resources and connect to more people, or for different organizations and individuals who are working on a similar topic to connect and collaborate. And so one of those groups is the Intergenerational LINKages Community of Practice. And I'm going to hand it back over to Betty now because she is the group lead with that group and has organized today's event. So Betty.
Thanks, Erin. And like Erin said, this is the group that is hosting this event. So if you're not part of this group on CORE, then as soon as this session is over, go to that link, go to CORE Alberta and become a member and join our group, because then you'll be getting all the latest updates and invitations for the events and the IG cafes that we host. Let me introduce you to our team. So we have Corey Ladwig. She's the team lead. She's the team lead for seniors, adult, and community programs in County of Grand Prairie. And Janice Munfries is the senior analyst with the Ministry of Seniors, Community, and Social Services. Erin, who you've already met, she's the digital engagement coordinator with Healthy Aging Alberta. That's a fancy way of saying she supports us all the way. We could not do this without her. And then last but hopefully not least is me, Betty Good. I'm an intergenerational trainer and consultant with and on my own here in Calgary. Some of you, probably most of you, know that I was with LINKages Society of Alberta until the end of October. And since they no longer exist due to lack of funding, and let me get my Kleenex as I shed a few tears, I'm not leaving the intergenerational world. So I will continue on this committee. So I gave you guys some homework. So Erin, should we just turn off the... Yeah, okay. So we can see each other, because I want to talk well, actually, I want to listen. Your homework was you were to think of an intergenerational friendship that you have in your life. Okay, I hope you can all think of one. Either your friend is older or younger, but not the same age as you. Okay, and then the second question that you were to think about: how is it different from one that you have with someone your own age? And hopefully you've had some time to think about that. And so now I know that we have a fairly big group, so I've got some follow-up questions. And those of you who are not shy, please just speak out and answer the questions. And those of you who either, too many other people are talking and you don't get a chance, or you would rather use a chat box, answer the question in the chat box. And here it is. So you've thought about your intergenerational friend, okay? What does your IG, intergenerational, what does your IG friend have to offer you? Another way to say that is, what do you appreciate about your intergenerational friend? So I'd like some of you to answer verbally so the rest of us can hear you. Okay, everybody's shy. Okay, some of you are typing.
Okay, I'll break the silence.
Thank you.
I have a couple of intergenerational friendships in my life that I'm very fortunate to have. So one of them is with my grandchildren, and how it's different from friendships with people my age is my grandchildren allow me the freedom to play and be silly and get out of my comfort zone and just do things that I wouldn't normally do. I'm also fortunate to have friendships with older people in my life. So my mom is 86 and my husband's uncle is 78. And those friendships enable me to kind of talk with them about their wisdom on an experience in things that I'm mulling over and trying to figure out, is this a good decision for me? So very, very different kinds of benefits, but both older and younger relationships are very beneficial to me.
Jackie, that's beautiful. Anybody else? Okay, well, while I'm waiting, and feel free to interrupt me, let me tell you about some. Jackie, you said you had a couple or a few intergenerational friends. I've been fortunate for most of my life, especially my adult life, to have friends of different generations. One, like a really good friend, is 40 years younger than me. And we met because we were working together, and we still get together regularly. We've known each other probably, I don't know, 10 years or so, no longer than that. And I've got some, like throughout my life, I've had older people that I've always admired. And I thought, wow, like you can learn, like Jackie said, you can learn so much from the older people in your life. And then you can play or, do other things with the younger people. And what I like, for example, and you'll find out later, Amber and I are friends. We met through LINKages where we both worked. And being with somebody younger, because I'm in my 70s, and so being with somebody that's younger, you learn so much about the world that the younger people live in. And, you're not just stuck in your own thinking. It really broadens your mind. Okay, so here's one more question, and hopefully more than just Jackie will answer this time. So what do you think? Well, first of all, I asked what they had to offer you. But the second question is, what do you think you offer to your intergenerational friend? What do they get out of this friendship?
Hi, I'm happy to answer or share. So I'm lucky enough to have quite a few intergenerational relationships, and I think I love the storytelling and the sharing the most. And I find that the more relationships I am lucky to have that way, the more in common we have, actually. So we share life stories, but then I love to get some advice and some wisdom and some life teachings that I take apart a little bit, because I find that different relationships you get different things out of. And then I share them with my daughter, who happens to sit on an intergenerational roundtable that she was invited to join, and it's Pan-American. So she every 3 months gets to sit. She's 17 and grade 12, and she finds that she has just as much to share as they do with her. And so I'm finding the more awareness we build around intergenerational relationships, the more people seem to attach themselves to the benefits of these relationships, and wisdom goes back and forth between all the ages. And we just have to break down the barriers a little bit, because it's not always obvious and the natural sort of coming together. But when it does sort of click, I love how storytelling brings everybody together, but brings something special to everyone in a different way.
Thanks for sharing that. Anybody else? Okay, you know what I love? When I get together with younger people, and people my age too, but this is intergenerational. I love laughing with them. And Deanne, you said you have a lot in common. And when you find out things that you have in common, and then you both tap into your sense of humor, you can have so much fun together. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for those. We have, let me read the one comment in the chat by, I'm sorry, I'm going to mess up your name, by Newshat. I have made friends with younger and older people that I volunteered with. Younger people make me feel younger, and I learn from older friends' experience. So great. Okay, so Erin, if you want to put up the next slide, and we're going to talk about Amber. So as I said, Amber and I were friends. We first met when she did a practicum at LINKages during COVID. So we met briefly. She didn't work with me directly, but we did get to know each other a little bit. And then, and she'll tell you the story of like about a year or so ago, she approached LINKages because she's actually working on her master's of social work. And she had this beautiful idea for her thesis. And she asked us to help her with it by providing her, I don't know, what do we call them? They're not clients, but providing her with the help that she needed to get started on this. And then what was really amazing, so she did her thesis and her research in a rather unconventional way. And then last April, during Global IG Week, she had a film screening. And we were part of that, and it was just so amazing. And then we attended the International Intergenerational Conference together in Washington, D.C. in the summer, and that was so much fun because she had a poster board up there. And as you can see from the picture, she has done lots of presentations at different conferences. So now we are really privileged to have her present to us, and we don't even have to go to a conference to hear that. So Amber, it's all yours.
Thanks, Betty. But I would say the privilege is like the privilege of being invited in to share with you all today is truly mine. Okay, I am going to get this all ready to rock so I can share my screen. I am not the best with technology, so bear with me. All right. None. Okay. All right. So as Betty mentioned, my name is Amber, and I am very grateful to be here with you all today to share a little bit about my thesis work. So I know that Betty already has done a land acknowledgement, but I did want to just acknowledge briefly that my research was conducted on the traditional territories within the Treaty 7 region. And just because my presentation today is about intergenerational programs, I think it's really important to acknowledge that fostering intergenerational connections is not new. Indigenous communities who are often underrepresented in intergenerational research and practice have really long and rich histories of bringing together older and younger people in very meaningful and purposeful ways. And these ways are really woven into the fabric of communities and Indigenous ways of knowing. And so I always like to just kind of put this forward and just share that myself and other folks who identify as settlers do really have much to learn from our local Indigenous communities about intergenerational ways of knowing. And I really encourage folks, if you haven't yet, to have those conversations with elders or to seek out that information to do so, because it's very valuable. So as Betty mentioned, I will be sharing some of my thesis research with you all today. And this is just kind of a brief overview of what I'll try to cover in the time we have together. So I'll provide a little bit of background about myself and about research on intergenerational programs, or you'll hear me say IGPs a lot for short. I'll then discuss my research and then share some of the stories and the videos that some of the youth and older adult participants in my research project shared with me. And then I will share some recommendations for practice that you can hopefully take back into your own work. And I will leave some time at the end for Q&A and discussion. So as we're moving along, if you have a burning question that you just can't hold on to, feel free to just pop it in the chat, and then we'll circle back to it at the end and then talk about it. Okay, so I did want to start by sharing a bit about myself and how I came not only to this research project, but to intergenerational work in general. I think it's always important to know the person behind the work. So my interest in intergenerational work really stems from both my own intergenerational relationships and my involvement in intergenerational initiatives in the community. And it was really through my relationship with my grandma, who you see here on the screen with me, that I really came to understand the importance and the value of intergenerational relationships and just their ability to foster and nurture social well-being for both generations, not just one. And so when I was growing up, my grandma D, is what I call her, she lived down the street from my family, and she was a huge source of support and guidance and mentorship for me. And I have so many fond memories of her and I sitting together at her kitchen table, eating lunch together, her and I sharing stories with each other while she drove me to my dance lessons each week, spending summer evenings on the front porch shelling peas from her garden, and her teaching me how to make halotzi, or cabbage rolls, which is actually the photo that you see in the top left there on the slide. And I truly do cherish all of the stories that she has shared with me of her riding horses bareback on the prairie growing up, and hearing what my dad was like as a kid, and all the family recipes that she shared with me and that we've made together. And really, like, as an adult, I have come to appreciate that there is reciprocity in our relationship. She has often expressed to me how our conversations lift her spirit and how she appreciates the interest that I've taken in our family history. And she's also confided and shared with me things that she doesn't really share with my dad's generation, but she feels more comfortable talking with me about. So that's a really special relationship. And she's just turned 93 in the spring, and I am very lucky that she's still around, and I get to call her every once in a while and still catch up because she lives back in Saskatchewan. But my relationship with my grandma actually inspired me to start an intergenerational program in Vancouver. And the program is called When I Grow Young. And we were operating for 5 years before I moved to Calgary. And we connect elementary students with older adults who are living in residential care. And during the program, I got to go along with some kindergarten and grade 1 students to go visit their grand buddies, as they call them, at a nearby care home once a month. And the grand buddies, I remember they would just be patiently waiting at tables in the recreation room for the children to arrive. And when the kids would walk in, the whole room would just erupt in cheers and laughter because everyone was so excited. And I just have really enjoyed just kind of being there and just watching the kids and the older adults sit together and read books or color and play Connect Four. That was a fan favorite, and work on puzzles together. And it was interesting because when I would talk about the program with my friends and colleagues, I would often be met with responses like, "Oh, what a nice thing for the kids to do, to go and visit the older adults." Or they would say like, "Oh, I bet that those kindergartners learn a lot from the older generation." And I think that while both of those statements are true, what I observed was much more than a benefit for one generation. So over the 5 years that we ran the program, I overheard a 5-year-old and a 105-year-old, so 100 years age difference between them, connect over a shared love of baseball and discuss their favorite players. I listened as a retired jazz singer who used to sing with his twin brother at sold-out shows in Vancouver, Strathcona, teach the kids his favorite jazz show tunes, and everyone sing along together. I also watched a Cantonese-speaking older adult and a Spanish-speaking grade 1 student find ways to communicate with each other that didn't really require language, and also watch them teach each other words in their respective languages. And I also saw a young autistic student who really struggled to make social connections with her peers, really come out of her shell and make a very beautiful, meaningful connection with her grand buddy. And her grand buddy had told me that her reason to get out of bed and come downstairs as her health was declining was to come and visit her kiddo friend, which was just really special. And so I guess the point that I'm trying to drive home here is that reciprocity and mutual benefits were really present in all of these relationships. And it was witnessing these kinds of reciprocal intergenerational connections that motivated me to conduct the research that I'm going to share with you. So now for the more heady research stuff. I promise I'll get back to the feelings and stories, don't you worry. So as many of you know, intergenerational programs are programs that bring together non-related members of 2 different generations, and they usually involve sharing skills or knowledge and experience between old and young, and they often help address vital social and community issues. And there are many different programs, and they often differ in size and location and the frequency of interactions and the number and ages of participants and what they do together. They do often embrace a few common defining features. And these are that they purposely bring together generations to engage in planned activities that are designed to meet specific goals, that they seek to promote greater understanding and respect through the mutual sharing of knowledge, skills, and experiences, and that they foster reciprocal and mutually beneficial relationships across generations. In terms of what these relationships offer, the research has highlighted the beneficial health and social impacts of creating and maintaining these kinds of relationships with people who are outside of our own generation. So for older adults, participation in intergenerational programs has been found to improve physical and mental health outcomes, increase quality of life and sense of purpose, enhance self-esteem and feelings of community belonging, and support the development of positive attitudes towards younger people. For youth, previous research has found that IGPs contribute to also a reduction in ageist stereotypes, the development of self-efficacy and personal and social development, as well as learning skills. And then at a community level, IGPs enhance opportunities for the sharing of ideas, knowledge, and experience. They increase understanding, respect, and community cohesion. They develop new friendships and social networks. They build upon community strengths, and they can help tackle critical issues in our community. So where does reciprocity fit into all of this? Well, reciprocity is considered a core defining feature of intergenerational programs and a guiding principle for understanding the relationships that are developed in these programs. However, when I was looking at the research and what I've seen in practice, oftentimes we lack an in-depth and a shared understanding of what it means for intergenerational relationships to be reciprocal. I spent a lot of time thinking about and reading and talking about reciprocity, and it just doesn't seem like we have a really shared, like the shared definition. We just kind of say, yeah, they're reciprocal, but what do we actually mean when we say that? So like I said, spent a lot of time thinking about this, and so I'd like to humor you with what I've found and what I've come up with. So one of the first things that I kind of see a lot and hear a lot is that within our capitalist society, reciprocity is kind of often viewed as this more contractual or negotiated exchange. So I give you this, and then you give me something of equal value in return. But that's not usually how we see it in intergenerational programs. Within IGPs, reciprocity is often framed as mutual benefit. So the generations come together, and older adults offer younger generations wisdom and advice, while the younger generations offer older adults companionship and social support. And then another way that reciprocity has been framed is in terms of shared or complementary developmental needs. So I'm going to share this quote with you all because I think it kind of speaks to this. So this is what a couple of intergenerational scholars have said about reciprocity. Both generations need to nurture and be nurtured, to teach and be taught, to have a successful life review, and to learn from and about the past, to share cultural mores and to have a cultural identity, to communicate positive values, to have positive role models, to leave a legacy, and to be connected to a contiguous generation. When I was looking, though, at the studies that have been done about intergenerational programs, I noticed that in the existing research that there were very few studies that explicitly focused on reciprocity within the intergenerational interactions, and instead really focused on evaluating the outcomes of the program for only one generation. And I think that framing the outcomes and benefits of IGPs in this way does really risk positioning one generation as the provider of their knowledge, skills, or time, and the other as the recipient, rather than really recognizing the reciprocity as a two-way exchange where older adults and youth are both contributors and recipients, and they both have something to offer and something to gain from one another. So for my research, I did want to better understand what reciprocity looks like and meant to participants who were involved in these programs, and really kind of center their perspectives and their stories and hear directly from them. So as Betty mentioned, I partnered with a nonprofit organization here in Calgary called LINKages Society, who many of you are familiar with. But if you're not, LINKages facilitates intergenerational programs that connect junior high and high school students with older adults who are either living in the community or in residential care. And the main question that kind of guided my research was, what stories do youth and older adults in LINKages Society's programs have about reciprocity within their intergenerational relationships? So how did I set about answering this question? Well, there was 4 youth and 4 older adults who Betty had connected me with, and these folks were ones who had actively engaged in the LINKages programs the school year prior to the study, and they were the ones who took part in the research project. And I collected the data for the study in 2 phases. So in phase 1, I interviewed each of them individually, and I did a narrative interview. So I really wanted to hear their stories about their experiences in the program. And then in phase 2, we brought almost everyone together for a series of participatory video workshops where I supported participants to create their own short videos that shared their stories about reciprocity and the impacts of their intergenerational friendships. And I will be sharing some of those videos with you later on. And then after I did all that, I analyzed all of the stories from the interviews and the videos, and I will now share with you a bit about what I found out. So the first thing that I noticed was that the structure of the program really supported participants to develop reciprocal intergenerational friendships. The LINKages really created a space that purposely brought folks of different age groups together and provided these opportunities for the relationships to really unfold. Participants in the study really felt that the games and the activities that the program coordinators facilitated really helped them to overcome their nerves about meeting and getting to know somebody new, helped them to initiate conversations, and really allowed them to get to know each other better. And then they also felt that being paired with and visiting the same friends at each visit helped them to create a sense of familiarity and really build that meaningful connection. So here's a few quotes from a couple of folks in the study that kind of speak to this. And I will read one of them. So going to LINKages and having a schedule, like we're doing this on this week. It's all very well organized. You weren't stuck sitting with 3 teenagers not knowing what to talk about. It's all right in front of you when you get there. So just really speaking to how folks appreciated that, you get to see the same folks every week, and you really get to, as Terry said, learn and know them. And you also have something to do. So for participants, they said that they felt that fostering reciprocity was more of a relational process or a joint creation that emerged from their interactions with each other. And this process seemed to involve some very particular relational practices, as I've called them, that helped them to foster a sense of closeness with one another. So participants and their intergenerational friends expressed genuine interest and curiosity to learn about each other's lives, perspectives, and experiences. And I think one of the important things that a lot of folks stressed was how openness and no judgment really helped them to build trust and to feel comfortable sharing details about their lives. So Mackenzie, who was one of the youth in the study, she said her senior friend, was always very laid back and jokey. So even if we did ask a personal question, he was like, "Oh, wow, let me tell you." And he'd give you a nice long story. He was just very open and laid back. And then Brenda here kind of speaks to that no judgment piece. She said, "We started off as strangers, but after 2 or 3 sessions, we're all best friends. Just our ability to converse with one another, ask questions, have patience, no judgment, and just show up and be yourself." So yeah, the no judgment thing seemed to be very, very key here. So what did reciprocity look like for participants in their intergenerational friendships? Well, one of the things they talked about was mutual learning and the sharing of skills, wisdom, and advice. And sometimes this would involve sharing practical skills like drawing or knitting, and teaching and learning these skills together created a shared experience where there was no judgment of skill level or mistakes. And participants also described mutual sharing of life stories and experience that they had had and the wisdom that they had gained from those. And nearly all of the students also talked about the valuable advice they had received from their older friends, which you can see a picture of some of that advice on the slide there. A few folks also experienced reciprocity as the offering or receiving of inspiration and encouragement. So many participants spoke about the significance of sharing fun and laughter with their intergenerational friends. Participants also experienced reciprocity through expressions of care, acknowledgement, or appreciation for the friendship. And sometimes this would involve the giving or receiving of physical gifts, cards, or letters to acknowledge the significance of the relationship. But in other instances, participants described how the mutual care and appreciation were expressed more so through their words, actions, or feelings, and it was more of an intangible thing. So I want to share a story from one of the youth participants named Ope that does really speak to that reciprocity being experienced as that mutual care and appreciation that is not something that is tangible. So when Ope was in LINKages for a number of years, and she developed many important friendships with a few older adults that made an impact on her life. But when she spoke of her first senior friend, who I'm calling Mary, Mary seemed to hold a really special place in her heart. So I am going to read you part of what Ope shared with me during our interview together about her relationship with Mary. I will read. My first year of linkages, I lost both of my senior friends before the end of the summer. It was my first full year, and it was insane, just so much grief. It taught me how to handle grief a little bit. Right after Mary passed, we had to go to linkages the next week. It was the end of the year and we had this carol event. People were coming in and all of the seniors were there. And I just couldn't be there because I knew Mary was not there. So I just stood outside crying and it was snowing. It was definitely a low, but then you know what? That didn't stop me from going to linkages because it also helped me with the grief. Going through the process of losing someone, the grief, the sad stage, then trying to remember the memories. You know, when someone passes, you don't want to forget any memories. You hold on to them. We were with Mary 2 days before she passed away, and she told us, "I will miss you guys. I love you," and stuff like that. We were just so happy that she had someone outside of her family that was actually thinking about her. And she was so happy. She was just such a happy person. So for me, it's just really nice when it's like, there's no doubt that I was there. I was a part of her story. And I also meant something to her. Just the thought of knowing that she had someone there. She wasn't alone before she passed away. So that really makes me keep going back to linkages because I never want my senior friend or any senior to pass away knowing that there was no one there. So if I could make a tiny impact to just one senior friend, just knowing that there's someone who I could call my friend, who cares about me, who's going to come every 2 weeks just because I am there. Just knowing that somebody cares about you, I couldn't ask for anything more. And Mary had a lot of impact on my life also. Going through hard times and just trying to escape from everything. This was during COVID. You're in school and then you just know that for 2 hours you're going to be somewhere else with someone who's not in your family. It just makes you feel better. And just knowing that even if your friends are not there, you still have somebody who's thinking about you. And you also think about them. That's such an amazing feeling just to know that you are not alone in this world, that there is still someone out there thinking about you. And if that would be my senior friend, I wouldn't mind. So that's one of the things that kept motivating me to keep going back to linkages. It's because it just goes both ways. Oh, I have read that story so many times and it's different reading it out loud and I'm getting teary. So I think one of the things that I really want to drive home here is that rather than it being a one-way exchange, participants really experience reciprocity within their intergenerational friendships as a mutual sharing where each person contributes something to the other person. And so I put a couple more quotes up here on the slide that kind of speak to that, how this is something that is going both ways. Even if it's not the same thing that folks are offering each other, there's that mutuality there. So I will give you a couple moments to read these to yourself, and I'm going to sip my water because I've been talking for a while now. So I hope that you can kind of see from these quotes that, you know, thinking back to what I was saying earlier about that more contractual or utilitarian idea of reciprocity, where, you know, you give something to somebody and they return it to you with something of equal value. What participants offered to and received from their intergenerational friendships, like while it was not necessarily the same thing, it was also not an expectation or obligation. These offerings occurred because of the relationship and because that they appreciated or admired or were inspired by or cared about the other person in some way to say, like, you matter to me and I'm going to do this for you. And I think what's interesting too is that although participants and their intergenerational friends didn't necessarily expect to receive anything in return, the act of giving in itself seemed to have inherent and less tangible benefits, like feeling good or achieving a sense of purpose and meaning. So what about the impacts of these reciprocal friendships that folks made? Well, nearly all of the participants shared stories with me about the growth and the changes that they had witnessed in themselves because of their intergenerational friendships. For many of the youth, the advice that they had received from their senior friends inspired them to change their education plans and their future career paths. I know Ope had said that she made the decision to take a gap year after high school, and that was because of the encouragement and advice of her senior friends. The conversations that participants had encouraged them to reflect on and challenge some previously unquestioned cultural conventions or beliefs, including stereotypes about age. I know Brenda did share a story with me about how in talking with her youth friends, she really unpacked some ideas about gender roles and gender norms and kind of thought about, like, really I think that being a good wife means I have to have dinner on the table at 5 o'clock every night for my husband, but maybe it's okay if that's not the way that it is. And so really shifting those ideas, which I think is quite powerful. And these connections also cause personal growth and new awareness through engaging with new ways of thinking and being, and enhanced folks' confidence and self-esteem. And what I thought was kind of a surprising or unexpected impact that many folks talked about was that the expressions of appreciation and gratitude that they had received from their intergenerational friends really changed their perspectives about their own ability to contribute or to make a difference in another person's life. So oftentimes folks, when I would ask, like, what do you think that, like, what has this relationship meant to you, or what has that offered? They could so easily say, like, oh, my friend, they offered this and this to me and they changed me in this way. But then when I would ask, how do you think, like, kind of like, what do you think that you had to offer them, or what do you think you taught them? They would often struggle and to say or to think of it, and they would be like, I really think that I got more than I gave. But I think Ezene's quote and a couple of the videos that I'll share with you in a little bit here kind of speak to how this shifted because of that gratitude piece. So Ezene had said, last year I honestly felt as if I had gotten more from my senior than I had given. However, at the end of the school year, he explained just how much my visits made his day and how he looked forward to it every week. This showed me that seemingly small actions can have huge impacts and solidified my belief that I was capable of making a difference. Well, I am going all over the place here. Okay, so now I'd like to screen some of the short videos that a few of the participants in the study made that really speak to some of the impacts of their friendships, because they are much more engaging and interesting than hearing me talk. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can share these videos with you. The first one that I'm going to share with you is from Brenda, who you've heard a few quotes from already, and I will say no more and let Brenda do the talking.
Hi, I'm Brenda, and I love linkages. It gives us a chance to know and understand teenagers of today. One of our discussions was about gut feelings. I was amazed that the kids didn't know what gut feelings were. I remember saying, "You don't know what gut feelings are?" When I first went to LINKages, I thought, oh, what am I going to talk to the youth about? Standing up and saying my name in front of people was a big challenge for me. I always thought nobody wants to hear about me, nobody cares about me, or they're all going to judge me. Our conversations and the games we played together made a huge difference. At one of our LINKages gatherings, we played this game with a ball of yarn. All of us stood in a circle and had to throw the ball of yarn to someone and say something nice about that person. I was really curious. What are they going to say about me? Then one of the youth threw it to me and said, "I'm giving it to Brenda. You're beautiful." Isn't that nice? From a 13-year-old who I didn't even know 4 weeks ago. It was really heartwarming and positive. When it was my turn to say something, I was nervous, but I did it. Having to accept a compliment and then deliver a compliment in front of people gave me the courage to speak up. There was no judgment. I didn't have to worry about people laughing at me or thinking I'm going to stutter. Instead, it was a lot of fun, and I felt a sense of belonging. Now I have no fear standing in front of a bunch of people and talking. That's gone. I've become more open. I think it was because the youth were so wonderful and so willing to open up and share. We started off as strangers, but as the weeks progressed, we got to know one another and became good friends. We talked about coming from different places, our different religions, and were able to laugh and giggle like little girls again. Everyone should have at least one session of linkage to have fun with the youth and to understand the younger generation. It's always so much fun, so don't be so fearful. I hope to see you at our next session.
That's Brenda's story. And I will just jump into the next one here because I know I'm conscious of time. This next one was created by one of the youth in the project named Jacqueline. And she called her video "My 1 Hour Vacation," and you will see why when you watch it.
Sometimes friendship means to simply be there for your friend, not to fix anything or change someone, just to be there and let them know that they are cared for and supported. I joined LINKages in junior high, one of the hardest times when it comes to friends and relationships. I fell into a tiresome, repetitive 9-to-5 lifestyle and mindset. Wake up, get ready, go to work, talk to the same people, go home, eat dinner, go to bed. I talk about the same topics with the same people and for most of the part maintain the same perspective. After hearing about LINKages, I decided to join to broaden my horizons and gain a different perspective from another generation. They've lived a long life with many different experiences, and as my life is only beginning, I feel I could learn a lot from them. Talking with my senior friends was eye-opening. Our fast-paced society doesn't always allow for deep conversations or intrigued listeners. Our generation cuts one another off, finishes each other's sentences, is very judgmental, and never fully appreciates what's right in front of us. I found with my senior friends I could talk about anything and they'd be the first to listen to my whole story, then follow up with an alternative perspective, perhaps something I would have never thought of. I found it intriguing to learn about their past, what their life has been like, how they found their footing, and where they are now. All my senior friends have come from different places, so being able to hear their outlooks on life and how they were able to persevere through hardships was inspirational. I really liked that our visits didn't feel like another deadline or requirement. It was a heartwarming experience that felt like a 1-hour vacation each week, and I couldn't wait to go back. I learned so much about genuine friendships from my senior friends that I continue to consider as I move through life. They taught me how short life is and to not forget to appreciate the simple things, to trust and be open, listen with open ears, do not judge, and to take what they have learned and apply it to my own life. Seeing my senior friends greet me with sheer excitement and open arms each week gave me a whole new confidence in myself. I felt like my voice was heard. I really appreciate hanging out with them and wanted to learn as much as I could from them because they have valuable stories to share. I realized how much you can impact someone's life and how much they can impact yours in such a short amount of time. There's a lot of people that'll come into your life and leave and only care about you while they're actively in your life. But an intergenerational friendship is one I cherished while I was in the program and I will carry near and dear to my heart for the rest of my life. Sometimes in life, you find a special friend, someone who changes your life just by being a part of it, someone who makes you laugh until you can't stop, someone who makes you believe that there really is good in the world, someone who convinces you that there really is an unlocked door just waiting for you to open it. This is a forever friendship. When you're down and the world seems dark and empty, your forever friend lifts you up in spirit and makes that dark and empty world suddenly seem bright and full. Your forever friend gets you through the hard times, the sad times, and the confused times. If you lose your way, your forever friend guides you and cheers you on. Your forever friend holds your hand and tells you that everything is going to be okay. You have a forever friend, and forever has no end.
Isn't that beautiful? I really love how Jacqueline talks about just friendship and like how that meaning has really shifted for her. Okay, I have a couple more, so bear with me. This next one was created by another one of the youth in the project named Mackenzie. And Mackenzie, I like the youth, they really just like took the idea and ran with it. I was like, we're gonna make videos, and they went, okay. And Mackenzie took a very creative approach, and she actually made an animated video, which is kind of like cartoon. It's very cool. So I'm excited to share it with you.
Using Powtoon.
Yeah, Mackenzie really speaks to that idea of like, I didn't know I made so much of an impact. And then that gratitude and acknowledgement piece really shifted that. So I have one more to share with you, and this one was created by Virginia, who is an older adult who took part in a LINKages program at her residential care facility. And she tells a really cool story in her video that kind of, it resonates a bit with Mackenzie's story and also what the quote I read from Esne. So I will play it now for you.
LINKages after somebody else had dropped out, and they asked me if I'd fill in as a spare. And when it happened again, I just stayed with it. I've been involved with kids and youth my whole life, so it just seemed a natural thing to do. When I first started, I didn't know what to expect, but once I got into it, it was great. The year COVID hit, I had 2 young boys who were my LINKages friends. They would come and visit, and we laughed a lot. They were outstanding youths and were kind of goofy and very funny. We laughed a lot together about different things that had happened and what was going on. They would tell me about their schoolwork and what was going on, what they were doing in school. I was telling them way back in my time when I was in school. We talked about travel and going places and where I've been and where some of them have been. When COVID happened, we weren't able to visit in person anymore, but at the end of the school year, the kids came to visit us outside. All of us seniors were outside in the park area, and the youth were outside the fence. The 2 boys were showing me a sign they made through the fence. I didn't know anything about the sign, and they surprised me with it. Everybody was out there was interested to see what the kids were doing. The sign said, "Knock, knock, who's there?" "Frank." "Frank who?" "Frank you for being our friend." And it had my name on it. I didn't think that I made that much of a difference, but they must have liked me to do something like that. It made me feel good, like I mattered, and I was somebody who could help. I always enjoyed their company during our visits and had a good time. It was really heartwarming to know that they appreciated me too, like I did something right for a change. All the kids were my friends, and it doesn't matter how old they are. I think we should be able to get along with people no matter what age they are. We should take people as they are and not to try to change them, but accept them the way they are. And that's what I did.
That's Virginia's story. Yeah, I feel like it's always nicer to hear from folks themselves than hear from me. Okay, I will go back to my slides here. So to kind of sum things up, what I found was that the program elements such as formal pairings and facilitating meaningful activities supported participants to develop meaningful connections and relationships. The relational practices such as curiosity, openness, enthusiasm to learn with and from one another, and a lack of judgment contributed to the development of relationships where reciprocity can unfold and can happen. And that reciprocity is an ongoing relational process that involves mutual sharing and mutual learning and the sharing of knowledge, skills, encouragement, and inspiration between age groups. And just the role of gratitude and acknowledgement, because it can really help promote reciprocity and prompt folks to really be able to recognize their own contributions and offer something in return for what they had received. And then in terms of the impact of reciprocity, these experiences changed folks' plans for the future, shifted previously held ideas and beliefs, led to personal growth and new awareness, enhanced confidence and self-esteem, and a shift in perspective of the value that we can bring to relationships and the difference that we're able to make in another person's life. So what does this all mean for intergenerational practice? I feel like I've spent a lot of time talking about research, but let's bring it back to what a lot of folks in the room are doing. So kind of based on what I found in my own research and what knowledge is out there in existing research, I want to just offer a few suggestions that you could hopefully take back into your own work. So the first thing is really just the importance of training for both facilitators and participants. And within the training, really attending to negative stereotypes, really framing the other group in terms of positive and beneficial qualities, just to kind of help overcome that ageism that is so rampant and prevalent in our society, and set folks up to be able to recognize and acknowledge both the gifts and the skills that they have to offer, but what the other generation has to offer as well. And also to kind of address fears and nervousness, because sometimes folks can come in and be a little bit nervous about meeting somebody new, especially from a different age group. So the training is really just meant to set folks up for success in their intergenerational connection. The other thing is the importance of grouping participants into formal pairs or to small groups and meeting on a frequent or a regular basis, just so that folks can create that sense of familiarity, and those things can really support youth and older adults to develop trust within their relationships. The other thing is to facilitate activities that involve shared activity and ones that encourage more natural topics of conversation. And I think what's interesting is that previous research kind of suggested that the type of activity that you do in the programs is actually less important than ensuring that the activities that you choose are meaningful and fun for participants, and that the environment of the program itself really supports opportunities for meaningful connections to happen. And so it seems that striking a balance between having some structure, but also allowing for flexibility, and there's those more natural conversations to happen so it doesn't feel like an interview, seems to really be key. And then the other thing that I really want to drive home was to really think of ways to create opportunities for participants to express gratitude for one another and to acknowledge the contributions that they have made to each other's lives. I think what, like, hopefully you've kind of noticed is that for Virginia and Mackenzie and Esene and some other folks that stories that you didn't get to hear today, it really seemed that it was on the last day of the program that those spontaneous and participant-driven moments of acknowledging the impacts and the meaning of the relationship happened. And I often think, and Betty and I have talked, like, what if that could be built into the program, and how could we find ways to encourage that acknowledgement throughout the time of the relationship, and how could that shift things a little bit too? So those are some things that I'm kind of putting forward. And then I did also, because I'm a theory nerd, I did also want to encourage folks who are designing and planning intergenerational programs to really think about and consider, like, what are the theories or the ideas that are informing the decisions that you're making, and how do these theories support or sometimes do not support reciprocity? And so I've included some theories here that speak to reciprocity and really kind of frame these connections as that each person is coming in and has something to offer and something to gain from these connections. And so I won't go into the weeds with these, but if this is something that is of interest, I really encourage you to kind of take a look at these three. If you're not already familiar with them, I know that some of the other core groups have also done some really great presentations on and trainings on asset-based community development. So there's resources available for that. But yeah, I know that oftentimes in practice, research seems very like intimidating or heady. But the way that I like to think about it is, like, think about the word research. If you break it into two pieces, it's re and search, to look again. So to really be asking ourselves, how are we doing this? Why? And what are the ideas that are informing what we're doing? And what are the impacts of that? So I hope that I've convinced you that research is a very important part of our work in the intergenerational field. And that you are doing research, even if it's not formal and like this, but you're gathering information and using that information to inform the decisions that you're making in your program. So that's all I have for you. So I just want to say thank you so much for listening and for joining us this morning. And I did include my email here on the slides. And if you are interested in viewing participants' videos, including a couple more videos that we didn't have a chance to share today, you are welcome to scan this QR code that I put on the screen here, and that actually links to a YouTube playlist with all of the videos if you'd like to view them. I will stop sharing my screen, and we can open it up for questions or a discussion, because I would love to hear folks' thoughts. The thing about being a researcher that is not so fun is that you spend a lot of time sitting at your computer by yourself, reading and writing, and you don't get to have conversations, which is, like, to me, the most important part about knowledge generation. So I would love to hear from you all, and if you have any questions for me, I am open.
I have a question. Congratulations, Amber. It's a great project. I'm sitting here taking it all in because it brings me back to the project that I focused on for my master's degree, which was in line with yours, except mine focused on co-creating intergenerational shared spaces. And I'm wondering, in your research, if you came across more ideal intentional spaces that were conducive to developing these relationships and reciprocal experiences, and if you have any advice as to where you think people best sort of connect and take it forward.
That's a really good question, Diane, and I'm also really curious. I want to read your thesis, if you would share it with me, because I would love to hear, because I know yours focuses more on the perspectives of, like, the program, the folks that are facilitating the program. Is that correct?
It is. It was in partnerships. So how could we, as a community social responsibility, come together to facilitate bringing people together? And I focused on finding the right kind of spaces to do that. It takes partners, it takes the will, and it takes funding and break down some of the barriers, right? So practical considerations like criminal record checks and that kind of thing. So mine was very practical, sort of on the ground, trying to facilitate more of these while building more and more awareness, because I find that your project and my project are like the best kept secrets when they're so nicely proactive, when we look at the amount of isolation and loneliness that there is, and that's all over the news right now. So I just think that these preventative type programs are so beneficial. So I'm looking to grow that and grow the awareness, but I looked at the physical practicalities of how do we bring people together.
Yeah, which I think is really, like, it's really interesting, because when you think about intergenerational programs, the folks that are often the ones that are championing them and kind of building those partnerships and relationships are either coming from, like, a early childhood development or education, or very, like, child and youth centric lens, or they're coming from recreational therapy or the senior serving sector and looking at that, like, aging and older adult lens. And so how do we kind of bring those two together, and how do you create a space and a physical, not only just a physical environment, and also how do you encourage and really support the fostering and development of these meaningful reciprocal connections? I didn't come across much about shared sites in this research project, just because oftentimes shared site programs focus on younger generations. But it's funny that you asked this question, Diane, because I've started to dig into that work, because I'm working on another research project now that's actually looking at a shared site where there's an early childhood education center in the same building as a residential care facility. And there's some interesting stuff that's actually coming out, not only from within the intergenerational field, but this work is so interdisciplinary and it touches so many different things. And I've been seeing a lot of really interesting stuff that's actually been coming out of architecture and really looking at the nitty-gritty of the physical design. And one of the things was that there needs to be, like, it needs to be a space that is, like, where people are meeting on equal ground, right? And creating that, like, that equal ground. And we can create that through how we frame the program, and we can create that equal ground through training and preparing folks to enter the program and enter those connections. But you can also offer cues with the physical space too. So that's my, like, roundabout answer, and I feel like I'm also curious about this too, so I think it's really timely that you asked.
Okay, well, let's keep connected and talking about it. In the research that I did and talking to the partners in my project, we all agreed that for generations that know this well, their acute immediate care and needs were isolated and siloed into where they live, where they can get health care, and for the younger, where they're educated, where they do their recreational programming, even homes and neighborhoods. And there is now more and more, and there's great examples across the world, how to integrate that better and bring back communities that actually are self-serving in facilitating relationships, intergenerational or just plain relationships. So, even if you think of homes and how we develop backyards, and so they're very little front yards for socializing and being out in your community, but we gave everybody huge backyards, in some neighborhoods, so that they could just have their own private little gatherings at the back without front facing or facing the people that came along on the street. And same with intergenerational, right? We put people in boxes, institutions, whatever you want to call them, residences, with very little space and interaction, physical space and interaction availability in outside of those homes and facilities. So architects are now looking at that better, developers, the 15-minute idea of your neighborhood being accessible to everything you need. And then all of a sudden there's a whole recreational aspect to that as well, a social responsibility to get people out and about and helping each other. So
and I think it's going to take a culture shift, right? Because
very much.
Dominant Canadian society is so age segregated. You're right. We all are often in spaces and places where we're interacting with people that are of the same generation, but it wasn't always like that. And there's also a lot of other cultures that take a more collectivist lens where that's not even the case. Like, I know one of the participants in my study, Ope, she's from Nigeria and she migrated to Canada when she was a preteen. And one of the things she talked about was why she joined LINKages in the intergenerational program. Was she's like, growing up in Nigeria, like, older adults don't live in residential care. They live in the community. And she talked about how, I would leave my house and you walk down the street and you see these older adults and they have a little community market and they're selling things. And if you see them every day, you talk to them. If you don't go down there for a couple days, they come to my house and they knock on the door and say, Ope, I haven't seen you in this many days. Like, how are you doing? Right. And so it's embedded in the way that the community is, like, in terms of the built environment, but also culturally. And so I think it also requires that culture shift to kind of get folks that are aligning with those dominant ideas of individualism to really start to see, like, hey, how do I create opportunities for myself to connect with folks that are living in my own neighborhood or like close by that I'm not crossing paths with because the kids are in school. I go to work every day with people who are of my own or the next generation, and then older adults are siphoned off into the healthcare sector.
That's right. I know. It's showcasing how integrated we can all better be in each other's lives, and we don't have to go to Nigeria to see the examples. Like, we have beautiful Indigenous culture here that is untapped, and showcasing how the different generations are not only in each other's lives but take care of each other.
And it's embedded in the language. Like, I learned a little bit about just how it's embedded into like Blackfoot and Cree language. The words that are used for, you call, like in Cree, Cookum is not just your biological grandparents. That's for any person who in the community who is older, who fulfills that role in your life of a grandparent, regardless of whether or not you are biologically related or not, right? It's so embedded in the language. So we have so much to learn as settlers from our Indigenous community members. And you're right, it is incredibly untapped. And that knowledge is knowledge that has not, like I said in the beginning, it's often knowledge that is not, it's unheard in our field. And I think that is such a missed opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. My last thought is, we hear the saying, it takes a village to bring up a family. And I always wanted to do like a side project saying, define that for me. It takes a village. We say it, but do we really tap into it? Do we live that saying? And it means something different for everybody, and that's fine. But I just think there's such an opportunity to flesh that out and then start actually living by what we're saying. And I think people would find so much beneficial, and isolation and loneliness and depression in all generations would siphon away. Like, I think we just be better off. Anyways, I'm taking up all the airtime. Sorry.
You are preaching to the choir, Diane.
I know I am. So we just need to keep preaching and get louder about it. So
I agree.
And we need to stop building communities for only 55 plus. I live in a high rise. It's not a seniors building. The family across the hall have a 3-year-old. My neighbors have a 5-year-old. And why would I want to be with just people my age? Like, most of us are, I was going to say, we're boring. I don't want to say that because sometimes we are, but we're promoting intergenerational work, and that's awesome. And we could talk about this all afternoon, but I'm afraid our time is up. So I just want to say thank you, Amber. That was amazing. And you know what? Sometimes when you listen to a researcher speak, it's kind of dry, but yours was not dry at all. And we just love your passion that comes through, and all the stories that you shared was great. So let's give her a clap. And thank you for agreeing to do that. And I know that she's like knee deep working on her thesis right now, but she carved out this time for us. So we really appreciate it. Okay, and I want to thank the rest of you for coming. I noticed some had to leave early, and some didn't show up at all, but they're probably waiting for the recording. So Erin, I'm going to turn it back to you so you can just remind them tell them how can they join Healthy Aging Core?
Yeah, so if you are a member already of Healthy Aging Core, corealberta.ca, you can head over to the groups page and search for Intergenerational Linkages Community of Practice and join. And then you're welcome to share. Like, you could post this research that was just talked about there if it was open to share there. You do have to be already a member and logged in to your account in order to join a group. But if you're not already a member, you can do so by, again, going to Core Alberta and just going to the register link. So we'd love to have more folks there. In addition to these learning sessions, there's also an opportunity to contribute through discussion or through resource sharing. And then just another piece is I'm going to be popping a survey into the chat, and it'll also be sent out in the follow-up email, but just a few questions, well, more than a few, but not too many questions, just giving some feedback about today and what you'd like to see in the future. It also helps us report back to our funders. So we would appreciate any feedback you have. Again, check out Core Alberta, and if you have any follow-up questions, you can contact Betty at the email address she sent the reminder from, or myself at info@healthyagingalberta.ca. And so I don't know, Betty, if you have anything else to say. But I also want to say thank you to Amber. That was an excellent presentation.
I forgot to say there are other events coming up. A lot of you, I think, were in our IG Cafe earlier this month. We've got dates already planned for IG Cafes and for other events coming up in 2024. I don't have my folder with me right now, so I'm not going to tell you about them, but we'll be emailing and letting you know. So I was going to say, usually I may not email all of you. We have a mailing list of the people that belong to our group, our IG community of practice. And we also post them on course. So just keep watching. And thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.